know, like a lot of folks who've been regulars at this lunch, myself included, I've been here several times, I think at least through a couple of mayors and a couple of governors when they give, you know, sort of the update from time to time here at this organization. And it's funny, I remember sitting there and listening intently and hoping for a big idea that was going to transform our city, looking for some inspiration, looking for a couple of silver bullets maybe on our big problems. And I got to tell you, actually, each time with our past mayors and governors, I was pretty impressed. I think they generally did a good job, and I left feeling pretty good about leadership in our state. But as I heard time after time this happen, I kind of also noticed there's a little bit of a formula. I feel like there's a formula for the NAIOP speech that politicians give. And the formula, you know, is kind of first, let me tell you how great our city is, how awesome Albuquerque is, or how awesome New Mexico is. And then it's, you know, if there's some problems, well, we gotta get Santa Fe to fix something, or we have to get APS to do something, or maybe there's a national trend and it's DC's fault. And then there's usually some close with some idea or a concept that we can believe in going forward. It's actually it's a pretty good formula for speech. And I can do this too. I can easily just pretty much say, look, I've been mayor for 6 months. We've got 3 new companies that came to town. With AED, we created 300 jobs. We are back on the cool lists for millennials and as a tourist destination. Crime stats, almost all of them are down for the first time in years. And the other challenges the legislature can work on and we'll work with our school board to fix. So I think we're done. I can do questions. Lynn, let's go. So I want to do something a little bit different today. And I think, you know, hopefully I'll get to share with you all sorts of details and all the projects that we're working on at the city over the next 4 years or however long people will have me. But I think today I want to focus a little bit on kind of where we're at and then map out a little bit of a roadmap going forward. But I think where we're at is particularly important. And I actually believe in terms of Albuquerque today, it would be a little bit of a disservice to both our city's successes and also our struggles to just give you some talking points and some poll-tested slogans. So I'm not going to do that at all today. Today, I want to talk about the reality in our city. And I want to talk about, hopefully, a thoughtful, purpose-driven path to guide us through some tough times. Today, I want to call it like it is, and I'm going to ask for your help to find a way forward to become a city that we can believe in. Now, one of the first conferences that I went to as mayor, we have a lot of these that you can go to as mayor. In fact, you can kind of be out of town all the time if you want to be. But I went to the Mayor's Institute on City Design, and it was awesome. There were just 10 mayors there, and it was for 3 days, and it was with some of the biggest developers and urban planners, a lot of the ULI crowd in the country. These are folks who've transformed cities all around America for good. And we're all the different mayors are kind of presenting and going through their development ideas. By the way, the Balloon Fiesta Park came from this concept. The original rail yards design came from this conference. So a lot of mayors always go to this, and actually both Marty and RJ recommended that I go to it, and I was happy to. But I was showing pictures of our city, these awesome pictures from Visit ABQ, which does a great job, and tourism is up. But if you look on their website, you've got these amazing shots of Alvarado Transit Station, of Central, of Rio Grande Boulevard. And I was showing this, and I was kind of bragging on Albuquerque, talking about how great the Innovate ABQ project is and how I want to double down on that. And then I kind of paused a little bit, and I had to think. You know, I've got pictures on my cell phone from driving around of those same areas, and they don't really line up to those pictures. We've got to be honest. Think about what's in front of Alvarado Station. There's obvious drug dealing, there's homelessness, there's poverty. We look around Rio Grande Boulevard or any of our major streets and we see panhandling. Again, poverty, homelessness. We see Central, we see a project which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot, unfinished. We see the Mother Road, the Route 66, the corridor through our city that is a mix of well-intentioned efforts a lot of you have been a part of to transform our community. but there's also a whole lot of work to be done. And this is, I believe, where our city is today. Unfortunately, we have to admit and we have to acknowledge we are a city that is stricken by addiction, that is dealing with real crime problems that are worse than they've been in any recent years that most folks can remember. And we're in the grips of a struggle with homelessness. And we are a city, I think, treading water just to keep up. And I believe in many ways we've been adrift, not on purpose. We have all tried, especially in this room, desperately hard to do everything we can for the city. And I know our city councilors have worked tirelessly to deal with many of these issues that we've been facing. But at the end of the day, we're still grasping. We're still looking, sometimes desperately, for anything we can do to move the needle, to catch up to Denver, to be more like Austin, to catch up to Phoenix, you name the city, but to somehow realize the potential we all know is inherent in the city of Albuquerque. But right now, we're a city a little long on ideas, a little short on focus, a little short on actual solutions, and on leadership and action. So with the city, unfortunately, facing a crime problem that has been building over the last few years, an economy that is anemic. I will say this, though, construction has been up last year. The permits look good there. But overall, our economy's been flat. We have not recovered from the recession. I think many of us know this. And our real wages actually continue to decrease. And I will tell you this, right now for this summer, we need to be ready and we need to stay strong as a city because we are in for a long summer. It's going to be a hot summer. It's going to be a summer, I think, unfortunately, no matter what we do today, will be marked by homelessness, will be marked by crime and wildfires. Now, this is, I think, obviously not good news. It's not something that I want to share. But I know this is the challenge that I ran for. I went into this office eyes wide open. For those of you who followed the campaign, this is not the first time you've heard this. I believe right now this is actually the hardest job in the government sector right now in New Mexico, to be the mayor of Albuquerque. Because we've got all of these issues to deal with. And then, of course, we've got our art project. We're going to have a big update on that in the next coming week, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I did have to laugh, though. There was a blogger out there. We had a new baby elephant, which is fun to celebrate at the zoo. One suggestion was to name it Art, because it was up and running. So, and actually, we almost did that, by the way. That was So I do have long-term optimism towards art, and if folks want to ask questions about that, we can go back to that. But I know this, against these challenges, I've been reflecting a little bit on my own path, being born and raised here in Albuquerque. And whether you're just new in town or whether you've been here for a long time, I think we also have to remember Albuquerque's story. You know, I remember when I was a kid, actually, Nob Hill was totally run down. My mom didn't like it when I would drive down to Nob Hill to buy heavy metal cassette tapes at the record stores down there. Those were about the only businesses down there back then. And, you know, no matter all the details, Nob Hill is a shining star for our city. It's a great place. And I also remember the International District in the 90s. And yeah, it's got challenges now, but it was nothing like it was in the 90s. So I know we are a strong and resilient city. And I know we're going to come out of this situation that we're in right now. And I know that raising my own 2- and 4-year-old and my family here, that I am more committed than ever to the future of this city. And I believe actually that in many ways this, of course, is what I was meant to do. I had a whole different career after going to Notre Dame and business school in corporate America, and I wanted to move back to Albuquerque and get involved in public service because I believe in the promise of our city, and I believe that we actually can and should reach our full potential to be one of the strongest and most unique cities in the country. But we've got a lot of work to do. So where I want to start is a couple of things. Number one, I think it's time we get past some of the notions in terms of trying to reach out to the latest economic trend or the latest big idea, the latest silver bullet that is going to somehow solve all of our problems. So I'm a huge fan of best practices and learning from everyone else, and I read a whole lot of books. But when it comes to trends like economic clusters or the rainforest book that we all read, or trying to hunt for an economic development elephant to move here and hire us all, whether it's Tesla or Amazon, whether it's building the spaceport down south. Some of those things are worth trying, and if we get them, that's awesome. That is awesome. But we cannot rely on them any longer. What I'm proposing and what my administration is about is something much different. It's about focus. It's about narrow focus on the things we have to get done, not the things we want to get done, the things we have to get done to achieve our full potential. It's not about the silver bullet, it's about zeroing in on the target. It's about focusing on our competitive advantage and using a well-disciplined thesis that guides us to sustainable, broad-based growth in the long term. So to do this, I'm suggesting that we actually focus on one thing, impact, and I'm going to talk about how we might actually be able to do this. The first place we have to focus on, of course, is public safety. The situation right now, I believe public safety is, of course, related to the economy. If we had a booming economy, we wouldn't have these public safety issues. But you have to fix public safety right now first. We cannot be a prosperous city if we cannot get a handle on our crime problem right now. That's why that is the #1 priority for my administration. Now, when it comes to crime, I believe in attacking it from all sides. And we started by doing that by restructuring APD. It was the largest restructuring in our department's history. We've pushed resources towards the front line, and we are recommitted to DOJ compliance. Whether we like it or not, the DOJ is right now in the driver's seat, and we've learned that we've got to cooperate with them. We've spent millions of dollars over the last few years fighting and arguing with them. We are not going to do that anymore. I'm proud to say we've reset that relationship. Then we're going to focus on day-to-day policing. If you haven't noticed, cops are pulling people over again. So don't speed, get your license updated. We are back to day-to-day policing, and we're going after auto theft. That is a connection point to all other sorts of crime. We are going back to old-fashioned community policing and helping business owners and neighborhood leaders in the process. Now, our police department is stretched dangerously thin. At this point, it's not really worth going into why. I just know we've got to fix it. But I know this, the budget that we submitted to City Council is going to go a long way to doing that. And our interim police chief, Mike Geyer, and our officers every day have been doing more with less. And if this budget passes in July, for the first time in several years, we are going to have the resources to reclaim the public domain. And we are not going to be able to use money as an excuse anymore. Now, I also believe we've got to get past a whole host of other issues, and it's going to be a bumpy road on this process. But I believe over the next few years, we can get to 400 more officers. I believe we can actually make a dent in our addiction and behavioral health challenges by stepping up and finally having a place where folks can go to get help. We are one of the last major cities in the country that does not have a one-stop shop behavioral health homeless treatment center. We have to get that done. That's part of how we make it to the next phase of our development. Thank you. Now, in terms of economic development, I also have a revolutionary new concept that I want to roll out today. An unbelievably new thing called return on investment. It's a basic formula. And believe it or not, that is going to be the basis of how we approach economic development. So let me talk a little bit about how I think this can work. The idea is a little bit of back to basics, but it's about blocking and tackling. And I believe economic development should be based on 5 basic questions. This is how we're going to score every project in our city. Now, when I say every project, I mean every public project. Fully respect private development on private land, and it's the American way to do what you want to do with that and put your capital at risk as you see fit. But when it comes to public dollars, I think there's a different criteria. And here's the criteria I want to share with you. First, does the project does it build on our existing core, right? We all know our assets, and I've heard this 100 times here, whether it's the labs or whether it's tech transfer, or even if it's the film industry. We have to make sure we're building on strengths that we already have. The second thing is the particular sector a growth sector nationally? This is, I think, another issue we need to be very disciplined about. We want to invest in a tide that is rising all across the country. We don't want to be investing in industries that are actually going down in other parts of the country. This sounds really basic, but it's really going to narrow down what we spend our LEDA funding on, what we spend our IRBs on, and so forth. So we want a nationally rising sector. It's got to be something America is winning in, because it's very unlikely, if our country's not doing it well, it's just statistically going to be very difficult for us to stand up and say, well, we're going to change that trend. So we want to be sort of fast followers when it comes to industry trends nationally. But then I believe we need to focus on our existing competitive advantage, where we have a defensible foothold and where we could actually be a national leader. So instead of looking at 10, 20 different sectors or talking about high-level things like technology or technology transfer, we want to really focus on the narrow areas where we can be a national leader. Now, all of you, I'm sure, have lots of ideas on this, and we're looking forward to hearing them. But some that have already been around for a long time are around directed energy, around post-media production, photonics, things like this. These are areas where we are already a national leader, some things in the biotech field. Those are areas where we've got a chance to actually lead the country. That's what I want to put public dollars into. The next question is, will this particular project or investment create economic-based jobs? This is another basic thing that, Mark Lotman is Mark here. I mean, Mark tells me this every time I see him. He's been telling us all this for 20 years. And it's absolutely true. When it comes to subsidizing business, or in other words, investing in the private sector, public partnerships, we have to make sure they're economic-based jobs. Because if we're not pulling money in from out of state or from out of Albuquerque, we're actually not adding anything to the economy. We're just dividing up the pie differently. So I want to have some real discipline around this. And the last piece, which is probably the most fun for developers, is the concept of placemaking. In aggregate, any great city is an amalgamation of its places. Now, obviously, I'm excluding the people that live in that city. I'm talking about the physical city. The physical layout is, I believe, really that connection and connecting the great places in an individual city. So you've either got to make new great places, or you have to connect the great places that we already have. This is all sorts of projects that have been around for a long time, but I'm going to tell you how we're going to do things with this a little bit differently. I'm talking about projects like the rail yards, projects that have been stagnant for almost a decade, projects like the new rail corridor between Central and Lomas that I know the Garcias and others are working on here, projects like Central and Unser, which is now going to have a whole new redevelopment aspect to it. If we can actually combine these criteria with this notion of placemaking, here's what the city is going to do. We are going to throw every economic development tool into those projects to make sure they get done. We are going to load up tax increment districts, IRBs, LEDA funding, every single thing we can do to make sure that hopefully 4 years or however long ago, we are not talking about that same parking lot next to Civic Plaza that's been empty forever. Or we're not talking about the rail yards, which has been empty forever. We have to make those places in that placemaking sense in Albuquerque, and then we have to connect them to the other great places that we have. That's how we make step change development here in Albuquerque. Now, lastly, I believe we've got to step up for our kids. This is another area where this group has done a lot of effort with respect to what's happened at APS or even your own investments in the science fair and things like this. I want to make sure that I'm not wasting time trying to point fingers at APS or the legislature anymore, because the mayor has no formal control over that. I will tell you, as a private citizen, I have all sorts of issues with those entities. And I know that as state legislature and as state auditor, I went after all of the education issues as best as I could. And unfortunately, it didn't make much of a difference. So I'm taking a different approach as your mayor. I'm here to help our kids. That's my job as mayor, and there's only one place I can do it. I can't do it inside the school day. The mayor has no say over curriculum. I don't have any say over the superintendent or if we break up APS or not. But I know that the minute those kids leave school, when that bell rings, whether it's after school or whether it's over the summer, that's when the mayor can step in. The one universal academic truth in American education today is that our kids lose ground after school and over the summer. That, ironically, is the one place where the city can step up. So the budget that we sent down to council doubles the number of after-school and summer programs for our kids. We reach about 20% of the children who want activities after school and over the summer right now that need it. I want to make sure we make incremental progress on that every year that I'm in office. And I hope that someday we can never turn down a child who wants extracurricular activities after school or over the summer. That, to me, will be a game changer. And so this is, in many ways, our core thesis. It's not glamorous. It's not built on one idea or one book or one white paper or copying another city around America. It's about 5 yards and a cloud of dust instead of long bombs and trick plays. This is about getting crime under control. It's about driving real impact when it comes to our economy and placemaking. It's about stepping up for our kids. If we can just do those 3 things, our city is going to sell itself. And you guys are going to help in that process. Because we know, actually, and I love even economically, now Denver is getting priced out. I mean, it's too expensive to live there, and the traffic is too bad, and they have their own issues. And now Austin has these issues. We are actually poised regionally to be the net winner in all of these activities. We just got to take care of some of the basics. Then we're going to be just fine. We are going to be a truly great city if we can do that. But I need your help. As I'm sure is not lost on anyone in this room, or certainly myself, there is no way a singular leader or politician can do this on their own. I remember actually sitting here at one of these tables listening to the Pittsburgh mayor. It was one of the best presentations I've ever heard, and I'm sure some of you were here for this. And one of the takeaways from the Pittsburgh mayor, I remember he came up here and they said, well, what did you do? Aren't you such a great leader? How did you transform Pittsburgh? And he actually said, you know what? He's like, I didn't transform Pittsburgh. It was actually the community came together and decided on a couple of core ideas, and they agreed on those ideas, and they agreed on them throughout election cycles. And remember, he shared with us, he's like, now everyone running agrees with the plan for Pittsburgh. There is no discussion politically, because that leadership actually comes from the community first. And this is the first place where I need your help. I believe that in the upcoming years, we have to look to ourselves for our own solutions. We have to actually try and hit the target instead of looking for other silver bullets. And to do this, we have to come together as one Albuquerque. So in the future, I'm going to be reaching out with specifics on how to do this, but I'm going to give you some ideas here. With respect to crime, if your business is not tied in to the Real-Time Crime Center, you absolutely have to begin that process. You want to make a difference not only in making your properties and your facilities safe, but also crime fighting around the city. We actually have a way to do it. It takes some time, there's some technology hookups, but that is a game changer when it comes to crime in our city, and it's a way you can help, and it also helps your own investments. We're also going to be reaching out with a massive citywide volunteer program. This is going to be a way to take folks who want to help the city in any way possible. It could be filing paperwork for 1 hour. It could be working at our community centers. It could be actually helping facilitate some of our permitting processes. It could be testing out the new applications we have on cell phones that almost no one is using right now. We've got to get the word out in all sorts of ways, and we're going to ask the community to do that. Our city already uses almost 4,000 volunteers. We think we can almost double that by just letting folks know how they can help Albuquerque. And I think probably the second most important thing people can do is engage in this notion of after-school and summer programs. We're right now going through an inventory of every single program that the city offers and that APS offers and that every nonprofit in our city offers. And when we do that, we're doing a gap analysis to understand where we're missing out. Is it a particular age group? Is it a particular geography or a particular part of town? That's where we're going to have to come together to fill the gap. Also, we are going through about $30 million worth of out-of-state contracts. And believe it or not, we need your help to take those contracts. The funny thing about those contracts is that some of them are readily available. I mean, the city coffee contract, the city business card contract. And the amazing thing is either people don't know about them or the procurement process is too long. You name the reason, we are going to work on all of those reasons and make sure they're not a barrier anymore. And the last thing I'd share with you is this. Folks who have known me in the legislature and even in the auditor's office, I am a big proponent of public-private partnerships. And some of these development efforts that I mentioned, we are going to try to get folks who are committed to Albuquerque, who have already had their own capital at risk here in Albuquerque, to come together to actually partner with us to build out some of these placemaking initiatives that we're talking about. I think historically we've had this idea of we're just going to go out to RFP, we'll get a master plan, and it'll get done. It's not a bad idea, it just hasn't worked. So we're going to be doing that different. We're going to be doing it a little bit old school, where we're going to be getting folks together, even working with this organization, and saying, how can we do this on our own without trying to get an outside developer from out of state, or without trying to rely on a ton of outside capital. So stay tuned for more on that as well. So above all, I believe that if we actually can come together as a city, we can reach our full potential. It means in some ways setting our differences aside or aiming them at the particular government entity that's causing them, but coming together, at least with City Hall, on these basic initiatives. And know that for me, we might not always agree, and that's okay, but I think we're going to agree a lot. And know that I'm always going to listen. I always am committed to learning about things that I don't know, as is our administration. But I also know we're going to make some tough decisions, because we have to do better than we've been doing in the last several years. And I believe if we do that, we can actually restore the promise of Albuquerque. And we can truly be that multicultural role model, that city that is one of the most unique and one of the most special cities in America. But it's going to take all of us together, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I know we've been through this before, and I know we're going to get there in the future. So thank you so much. I tried to leave a little time for questions. Thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to our MCs, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be your mayor and for your time today and for all of your individual commitments to the city of Albuquerque. Thank you.